Meowmaid Part One. Once upon a time, on the high and wild seas, there was a pirate ship. It was dark wood banded in dark iron, dark cannons standing like dark-eyed cyclops at every port. At the helm was the notorious, the uproarious, the ever-furious Captain Calico Ken in his calico hat. He was as feared a pirate as had ever sailed the seven seas, and his crew was just as bad. They'd cut their ship, the Cunning Cat, through the waves. It prowled like its namesake, ready to pounce on any fat galleon stuffed with gold. The Cunning Cat had another, smaller cat aboard. Her name was Calliope, and she was the captain's good luck charm. She was the calico that gave old Captain Ken his nickname, and she'd been with him for 10 years. Every night, she'd sleep in her custom silk bed in the captain's quarters, and every day, she'd ride on the back of the boat, what the pirates called the stern, and watch the fish jump and sparkle in their wake. The pirates would scratch her ears and her arched back when they walked by. Calliope would meow at them, but they never understood exactly what it was she wanted. They just heard, meow, meow, meow. If they spoke cat, they'd know that what she wanted was fish, fish, fish. "Look at those big fish back there," she'd practically beg. "They look so tasty, but they're in the water. Fish 'em out for me, come on." But they didn't speak cat, so they'd just scratch her and move on with their day. Of course, little Calliope was by no means deprived. She was fed a fish for breakfast and another for dinner, but in between, she wanted more, more, more. She watched the fish jump behind the ship all day, taunting, tantalizing, teasing her. So close, but so far. She'd go after them herself, but there was only one problem. Like most cats, Calliope hated getting wet. More than hating it, though, she was terrified of the water. All that deep, dark wetness, anything could be under there. What if something grabbed her tail? What if something gobbled her up? What if she wasn't a good swimmer and she sank? What if, what if, what if? All those what-ifs made it impossible for her to jump in after the fish she wanted so badly. It was all very difficult for the poor cat. So, being too afraid to swim, she stayed laying on the stern and stared. Even when Captain Calico Ken would pull up alongside another ship, his cannons thundering and swords shining in the sun, Calliope would stay on the stern. Even when the screams and gunsmoke and grappling hooks filled the air, the scruffy orange cat would remain in her spot, watching the fish dance behind them, just out of reach. Only when the fighting was done and the captain was passing around the food would she join them. She would perch on his shoulder, pretty as any parrot, nestled under the brim of his favorite calico hat. The old rogue would spear pieces of fish on his dagger and let her eat them off in dainty bites while he carried on to his crew. "Yar, me hearties, let me tell you the tale of the sirens from Blueberry Isle," he'd say, and the pirates would all drink and listen while Calliope would purr and knead his shoulders. But even in those moments, eating tasty morsels and relaxing safe with her friends, little Calliope never stopped thinking about the giant, leaping fish behind the boat. One night, as the ship bobbed gently in the waves and most of the crew slept, she sat at her place on the stern. Giant fish leapt in the water behind her, looking like molten silver in the moonlight. For the millionth time, she thought about leaping into the water after them. She dreamed of cutting into the waves, catching fish in her claws and biting into a big wriggling one with her whiskered mouth. "Oh, it's not fair," she sighed to herself. "If only the fish didn't live in the water. If only I wasn't afraid of the water. If only. If only the sea went away and fish sprouted legs like a walking buffet. Oh, how I would pounce, oh, how I would play. That would make me happy. If only, if only." sea was my home, well, I'd have no fear of the spray and the foam. I'd follow the fish wherever they roam. That would make me happy, if only, if only. The song faded over the water, disappearing without even a ripple. Calliope sighed. She guessed she just wasn't meant to have all the fish she wanted. They were in their world, and she was stuck in hers, trapped by her fear as much as her fur. "That was a pretty song, little kitty," said a voice. Calliope nearly jumped out of her skin. It wasn't just that she was surprised, though that was true. It wasn't even that the voice was speaking in perfect cat, which was also true. What made Calliope jump so badly was that the voice was coming from the darkness of the water. "Who's there?" she called, ever the curious cat. "And where did you learn to speak cat?" A laugh echoed up from the water. It was a beautiful laugh, a musical laugh. It sounded like notes being plucked on some lord's harp, silver and bright as the moon. "Come on, where are you? Are you a cat too?" "Not a cat," came the voice again. This time it was followed by a splash as someone ducked below water. "Hey, come out here! Don't make me get the pirates after you!" The little laugh came again, followed by a small splash. A second later, a young girl emerged from the water. She was smooth and smiling, her skin and face slightly strange-looking. She was beautiful, but just shy of human. More familiar was her long, scruffy hair, nearly the same shade as Calliope's fur. It floated around the girl's head like petals around a flower. "Sorry to scare you, kitty," said the girl. "I just heard your song and I thought it was so pretty. I had to bring you something." She dipped back beneath the surface. "Hey, wait!" called Calliope, but there were only ripples. "Don't leave yet!" A second later, the girl burst out of the water, heaving a fat, slippery fish onto the boat next to the cat. With a cry of joy, Calliope pounced on the flopping fish and took a big bite. It was fresh and delicious and everything she'd ever dreamed it would be. "I've seen you eyeing them," the girl said. "I knew you'd want one." "I did!" the cat said, still chewing. "So what's your name? I'm Calliope." "A kitty named Calliope," the girl laughed, clapping her hands. "I'm Melpy." "Nice to meet you, Melpy. Hey, you never told me how you know how to speak cat." "I learned from the catfish," said the girl. "It's a different dialect, but it's basically the same." The cat nodded like that made sense, even though she wasn't quite sure it did. "And how do you live in the water? You must be an incredible swimmer." Melpy just gave that tinkling laugh again. "Something like that. Look close now." She flipped over and dove back into the water like a playful dolphin. In the light of the moon, Calliope saw Melpy didn't have legs, but a gorgeous, flowing tail. It was sort of an orange color, but with smooth, shimmering scales. You're a mermaid?" the girl finished with a smile. "I am, and I've always loved cats. We hear stories about them in the ocean, but I never thought I would meet one myself." "You hear stories of me?" Calliope exclaimed. "The pirates are always telling stories about you." "And what do they say?" "Well, some say mermaids will help someone who goes overboard." "That's sometimes true," Melpy said. "Others say that you'll lure a bad ship onto the rocks and let it sink." "That's sometimes true, too," the mermaid said. "But we usually just keep to ourselves. Unless we hear a kitty singing a beautiful song on the back of a pirate ship, then, well, we have to check it out. At least, I do." "Well, I appreciate that," Calliope said seriously, licking fish from her whiskers. "Why don't you ever jump in and catch a fish for yourself?" the mermaid asked. I see you have those sharp claws, and you could definitely climb back up." "Well," the cat said, blushing through her calico fur, "I'm just a little afraid of the water. I don't like being wet, and I don't like swimming, and it's embarrassing." Melpy smiled up at Calliope. "Don't be embarrassed. I live in the ocean, and even I get scared sometimes. We mermaids can't go too deep, you know. All that water, it means a lot of pressure. Go down too deep and we'd be squished." "Oh, hey, I have an idea." "About squishing?" asked Calliope. "No, about fish. How about I'll bring you another fish tomorrow, and you sing me another song? We can trade and maybe hang out." "Like friends?" Calliope asked. She had plenty of pirate friends, but they were smelly and they didn't speak cat. A mermaid friend? That's what she needed. "Yeah, like friends," Melpy said. "I should be heading home, though. It's getting late, even for mermaids." "I'll see you tomorrow?" "See you tomorrow." With that, Melpy flipped and dove back into the chilly waters of the sea, her shimmering tail cutting through with barely a sound. Calliope finished the fish and then padded off to her silk bed in the captain's quarters. A mermaid friend, one who would bring her fish. What a night! What a good night! Calliope drifted off to dreams of winding through the water, swimming alongside her new mermaid friend. The next night, true to her word, Melpy came back. And a couple nights after that, and the night after that one too, and soon not a single night went by without a visit. The cat would sing, and the mermaid would catch fish, and they'd talk while the ship slept and the moon rose over the sea. Calliope talked about growing up with Captain Calico Ken, the battles she'd seen, and the treasures they'd won. Melpy talked about growing up under the sea, the races through the algae-lit caverns and the family dinners of fish and kelp. Before long, the pair were friends. Their conversations went longer and later, their laughter ringing out over the silent seas. More than friends, they were best friends. And things probably would have kept on going that way, if not for the battle. It happened one night, just as the sun was setting. The crew was eating dinner, laughing and drinking in the ship's galley. Captain Calico Ken was at the head of the table, feeding fine fillets of fish to little Calliope. The cat was resting in quiet contentment, nestled under the brim of the captain's calico hat, and looking forward to that night's visit with Melpy, when she heard a distant shout. "Calliope! Calliope, come quick!" Was that Melpy? The sun was still a slash of light across the ocean's rim. She was way too early. Calliope leapt from Captain Calico Ken's shoulder and loped to the stern of the ship. Melpy was there, panting and flushed, her tail splashing the water behind her. "Melpy, what's wrong?" "Another ship! A pirate ship coming!" the mermaid said. "They're coming from the direction of the sun. Your scout can't see them through the glare, but they're coming. It's Captain Bloodbone. Warn your crew." Captain Bloodbone. He was one of the nastiest pirates around. Calico Ken would rob you, but Bloodbone would burn your ship to ashes on the water and breathe in the smoke for breakfast. She had to warn the crew. Calliope turned and ran back into the galley. She jumped on the table and started meowing and yowling as loudly as she could. "Har, little matey," said Captain Calico Ken. "You had your fish. What do you want now?" He threw her a little ball of yarn, and the other pirates laughed when she swatted it aside. "Oh, she's in a mood. Better watch those claws, Captain." Calliope leapt on the captain's shoulder and meowed into his ear. "Arr, quiet now," he said. She bit one of his golden earrings and pulled. "Arr! Enough of that, you fuzzy little scallywag!" He picked her up and set her on the floor as the crew laughed again. Calliope was getting frustrated. They weren't listening. But what could she do? They didn't speak cat, and she didn't speak human. Dramatic action was required. She leapt up onto the shoulder of old Captain Calico Ken and grabbed his favorite calico hat in her jaws. He reached for her, but she was too quick. Holding the hat in her mouth, she leapt from the table and scurried for the door. "Arr, you scurvy dog, you fallacious feline!" the captain bellowed as the crew gawked at his shiny, bald head. "What are y'all staring at, you bilge rats? Get me hat back! Arr!" Calliope darted between the legs of Pegleg Pete, slipped by the blind side of One-Eyed Willa, and ran onto the deck of the ship. Captain Calico Ken and the crew were right behind her as she jumped onto the starboard rail, the sun at her back. She knew somewhere out there was Captain Bloodbone and his wicked crew, and she willed her pirate friends to see them. Come on and look, you lubbers!" she hollered, but of course all the crew heard was meow, meow, meow. "Arr, what's gotten into you, you pesky picaroon?" Captain Calico Ken said, snatching his hat from her mouth. "You're lucky this didn't fall overboard. I'd have made you a cat-sized brig." Calliope felt her heart sink. He didn't see. None of them saw. They turned and started to head inside, back to their meals. Bloodbone would be there soon, and it would be too late. Too late to save the ship, too late to save the crew, too late to save their lives. The scruffy cat yowled. Bloodbone drew near. To be continued. Thanks for listening!